The pirates closed in fast, their ships drifting toward the helpless convoy like hungry wolves moving through quiet snow, and every civilian inside those frozen cabins felt the terror tighten around their lungs. Mothers pulled children close. Elderly passengers whispered last prayers. The distress signal blinked unanswered on every console, its red light fading slower each time, like even the power had given up hope. The boarding hooks extended from the pirate ships, long metal arms scraped and rusted, designed to rip into hulls and drag screaming families out into the dark. A low mechanical thud echoed as the first hook locked onto the lead civilian ship, and the sound hit every heart like a hammer. Panic spread in seconds. Someone shouted that the pirates were preparing to cut through the hull. Someone else said no human fleet was close enough to reach them before the air ran out. And in the middle of that rising fear, a little boy clutched his broken toy ship and whispered to his mother, "Nobody's coming, right?" Her silence was her answer. But then the starfield behind them shifted. Just a fraction, a strange tremor in the darkness, like space itself was holding its breath. The pirates didn't notice at first. They were too busy locking their drills, too sure that no one would dare challenge them in this dead zone. The civilian pilots stared at their scanners, confused, because numbers began rising on their screens. Energy spikes, gravitational ripples, something massive pushing through the void. The lights flickered across every ship as the readings grew stronger, sharper, impossible. The pirate commander paused, eyes narrowing, trying to understand the sudden vibration passing through his own hull. For one chilling moment, everything went quiet. Then it happened. A violent tear split the night, a long glowing wound slicing through the blackness behind the convoy. A roar exploded out of that wound. Deep, wild, powerful, a sound no one aboard had ever heard so close. Engines howled like a metal storm dragging fire behind it, shaking every window across the convoy. The pirates jerked their ships back in panic, alarms screaming as their sensors overloaded. A shadow emerged from the tier like a creature awakening from ancient sleep, its hull black, its engines burning blue-white, its presence bending the stars around it. A human warship, unmarked, unregistered, unknown, came screaming out of the dark with a fury that made even the children stop crying. The little boy stared at the glowing giant outside the window, his mouth falling open. But before anyone could breathe, the warship sent a single message across every frequency. 5 words that froze blood and lit hope at the same time. Drop shields. Now. Or run. And then the warship's forward cannons began to glow. The cannons brightened until the blue-white glow washed over every ship in the convoy, and the pirates panicked, scrambling to break away before that unknown human warship opened fire. Their engines burned hot as they pulled back, but something in the space around them shifted, an invisible pressure rolling outward like a silent wave, slowing their ships and twisting their turning arcs. Civilians watched the warship's lights pulse in a slow, deliberate rhythm, not firing yet, almost as if it were warning the pirates, or judging them. The pirate commander screamed for all vessels to retreat, but half of them couldn't move. Their systems were freezing one by one, screens locking up, engines stuttering, metal groaning. The convoy pilots felt fear and hope mixed together in their chests, unsure if the warship meant to save them or destroy everything in range. A sudden metallic screech tore across the hull of the lead civilian ship. The boarding hook still attached began pulling tighter on its own, as if something had triggered it. The pirates tried to disengage, but the hook jammed, locking them together in a deadly chain. Sparks burst from the hook's arms as the warship's strange energy pulse rolled past it again, causing the joints to twist and fold unnaturally. The pirate vessel jolted sideways, its hull bending under a force no one understood. Families inside the civilian ship screamed as alarms erupted and warning lights flashed red across the cabin. The mother grabbed her son, holding him against her chest as the floor shook. The convoy captain shouted for everyone to brace, but the tremors only grew worse. Then a new sound hit, low, heavy, vibrating through every bone. It wasn't the warship. It wasn't the pirates. It was something else, coming from the void behind the human vessel, something large enough to distort the scanner readings and swallow the stars behind it. The warship's engines cut suddenly, its glow dimming as if it, too, sensed the approaching presence. The pirate commander screamed for power to return, but their darkened ships drifted helplessly. A cold silence spread through the convoy, a kind that felt alive, like something unseen was moving closer but refusing to reveal itself. Even the children went still. Even the systems stopped beeping. The void itself felt heavier. The warship finally moved again, but not to fire. It shifted sideways, slow and controlled, as if making room for something else to emerge behind it. Civilians pressed their faces to windows despite their fear. The little boy's eyes widened, breath stopping in his chest. The stars behind the warship bent outward, stretching like something enormous was pushing through them, something older, deeper, hidden until now. And then a single sharp ripple tore across space, so loud it rattled every hull. Something was coming through. Something bigger than the warship. The ripple spread wider until the stars behind it looked like they were being peeled open, and every ship in the convoy felt the pressure drop so fast that ears popped and metal panels buckled. Civilians clung to seats as the deck vibrated like a heartbeat gone out of rhythm. The human warship didn't fire, didn't move, didn't speak. It only adjusted its angle, subtly placing itself between the convoy and the forming tier, a silent sign that whatever was coming wasn't part of any human rescue plan. The pirate commander screamed into dead comms as his ship spun helplessly, caught between a warship he didn't understand and a threat he couldn't see. A bright crack of white light shot down the center of the void as if space itself were splitting open like a cracked egg. The tier grew, widening with a sharp, painful groan that echoed through the hulls of every vessel. The first shape appeared. Long, skeletal, almost insect-like, with metallic limbs drifting out into the open as if tasting the surrounding vacuum. It wasn't a ship built by pirates or humans or any empire the refugees had ever heard of. It moved with an unnatural grace, shifting like it was alive, not manufactured. Its surface rippled with dim pulses of color, not lights, more like veins carrying something dark and bright at the same time. A second limb emerged, then a third, each one dragging through the fabric of the tear as if pulling the rest of its body into real space. The little boy gripped his mother's arm, whispering that the stars looked scared. She didn't answer. She didn't blink. She stared at that growing creature ship in pure frozen terror. The human warship suddenly powered its engines. Not fleeing, not attacking, but sinking lower and spreading a protective field around the convoy. The air inside the civilian ships tasted like metal as dust rose from the shaking floor. The pirate vessels, still bound to the convoy by their jammed hooks, spun dangerously close, colliding with each other as the strange creature ship's presence warped gravity around them. Screams echoed across the comm lines as the pirates realized they were caught in the crossfire of something far beyond their criminal life. The creature ship extended a glowing spine toward the human warship, and that spine hummed with a cold rising pitch, like a blade being sharpened in the dark. Then something happened that no one expected. The human warship, silent, fierce, almost myth-like, dimmed its lights and lowered its weapons, as if bowing. Not in surrender. In recognition. The creature ship responded with a single pulse of blinding light aimed straight at the convoy. The pulse of light rushed toward the convoy so fast that no one had time to breathe, and for one terrible heartbeat every person believed this was the moment they died. Parents threw themselves over children. Passengers squeezed their eyes shut. Pilots whispered quiet apologies to loved ones they would never see again. But the blast didn't hit. Instead, it wrapped around the convoy like a storm cloud curling around a mountain, bright but strangely soft, illuminating every hull with a pale, trembling glow. People slowly lifted their heads, confused, terrified, unsure if they were saved or simply being marked for something worse. The little boy opened one eye and whispered, "Mom, why didn't it kill us?" She couldn't answer. Her voice broke before words could form. Inside the pirate ships, chaos turned into desperation as their damaged engines sparked and panels cracked. Many of them screamed at the strange creature ship, shouting in terror, begging to escape, but their cries vanished into dead channels. They had lived their entire lives preying on the weak, never imagining they would face something ancient, something that seemed to look straight through their cruelty and judge it. The pirates' fear created a new kind of silence, a silent confession that no law, no prison, no fleet could ever force out of them. Their choices had caught up to them, and the space between the three forces, pirates, convoy, and creature, felt like a courtroom with no mercy. The human warship held its position, its engines humming low, like a steady heartbeat in a room full of panic. Something in its posture had changed. The aggressive stance from earlier had softened, replaced by a quiet readiness, almost protective. The refugees inside the convoy felt a strange guilt settling over them. Guilt for praying the warship would save them while knowing it might also be the reason this horror had arrived. The captain of the lead civilian vessel pressed his hand against the window, his voice tight as he whispered, "Did we call for help? Or did we call something else?" His words rippled through the crew, filling them with a fear deeper than death. Fear of the unknown truth. The creature ship's pulse faded, leaving the convoy floating in an eerie calm, but that calm carried a heavy warning. Something unseen was shifting inside the tier behind the creature, something larger, older, and even more impossible. The human warship adjusted again, angling its hull toward the convoy this time. Lights shimmered across its surface in a pattern that looked almost like a signal. The mother holding her child took a trembling breath as she watched the warship send a soft, slow pulse across the void, the first gentle color they had seen since this nightmare began. She whispered, "Is it trying to talk to us?" The answer came instantly. The warship sent a direct transmission, clear, calm, and deeply human. "Prepare yourselves. You must hear the truth." But before anyone could respond, the creature ship turned its blazing spine toward the human vessel and fired. The creature ship's blast struck the human warship with a force that lit up the entire void, and the impact sent a shockwave rolling through the convoy so violently that passengers were thrown against walls, ceilings, and seats. Hulls groaned. Windows cracked. Panels burst open in showers of sparks. The human warship held firm, but the glow across its armor flickered in a way that frightened even the most hopeful eyes watching it. Civilians stared in terror as the creature ship's limbs unfolded wider, revealing more of its impossible, living structure. Layered plates that pulsed like beating hearts and long tendrils drifting like they were searching for something specific inside the convoy. Pilots shouted that the creature wasn't attacking at random. It was scanning them, marking them, hunting for a target no one understood yet. Then the tier behind the creature widened again, twice as large now, and the vacuum around it twisted so violently that stars bent into thin streaks. Another silhouette appeared in the fracture of space. And this time, there was no mistaking its size or shape. It wasn't another creature ship. It was something far beyond that, a massive construct stretching out in every direction, made of dark plates that looked older than any known empire. Its arrival pulled every ship, convoy and pirate alike, closer by sheer gravitational force. Metal screamed as vessels drifted inches from collision, helpless against the pull of the giant thing coming through the tear. The human warship surged forward, pushing between the convoy and the tear, its engines burning at full power. It fired a defensive flare that exploded into a curtain of blinding white, temporarily disrupting the creature ship's tendrils. Passengers blinked through tears as the flare's light washed over them, revealing something horrifying in the reflection across the windows. The new arrival wasn't just a ship. It was a carrier. A hive. A moving fortress filled with hundreds, maybe thousands, of smaller forms waiting inside the open cracks along its hull, their shapes shifting like restless shadows. The captain of the convoy felt his stomach turn as he realized the truth. They weren't witnessing a single threat. They were witnessing the edge of an invasion. The pirate screams filled the open channels, but no one could help them. Their ship spun closer to the gravity well of the Hive-fortress, pulled like leaves toward a burning pit. The little boy held his mother with shaking hands as another violent tremor shook the convoy. He whispered, "Mom, if they came for us, then who are they really after?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The human warship suddenly turned its cannons, not toward the creatures, not toward the pirates, but toward the convoy itself. Its weapons glowed with a frightening, rising heat. A single message flashed across every screen. "You are not safe. Shields up. Now." And then the Hive-fortress opened. The Hive-fortress split open with a grinding roar that rolled through the void like thunder with no air, and every ship trembled under the pressure of what came next. Hundreds of dark shapes poured out, sleek, predatory, alive in ways a machine never should be, moving with a speed that made the pirates scream and the convoy freeze in pure disbelief. They didn't fly like ships. They swam through space, twisting and curving as if the vacuum were water, leaving trails of shimmering distortion behind them. The human warship reacted instantly, firing a barrage of bright, precise blasts that cut through the first wave, but the shadows didn't fall like normal enemies. They folded, split, reformed, turning each hit into two more bodies pushing forward. Civilians clutched each other as the sky outside filled with living darkness. The little boy cried into his mother's sleeve, whispering, "They're coming for us! They're coming for all of us!" The human warship accelerated, engines flaring so bright they painted the entire convoy in wild blue light. It positioned itself between the Hive-fortress and the civilians, its armor shimmering under a fresh defensive field. But its calm was gone. Now it moved like a wounded guardian forced into a fight it had hoped to avoid. The pirates scrambled, trying to break free from the jammed hooks binding them to the convoy, but it was too late. One of the living shadowcraft slammed into a pirate ship, tearing it apart in a blur of jagged limbs and shimmering teeth. The explosion knocked several civilian ships spinning, and alarms blared as stabilizers struggled to keep them from colliding. Passengers screamed as debris scraped across their hulls like metal claws. The captain shouted emergency commands, but even his voice cracked under the terror spreading through his crew. The creature ship, the first one that emerged, shifted its glowing spine, sending a targeted pulse straight at the human warship. The pulse hit hard, pushing the warship backwards, forcing it closer to the convoy. Panels bent. Engines wavered. It fought to hold the line, but the swarm was closing in from all sides. The warship responded with a shockwave that rippled across the void, vaporizing dozens of the smaller shadowcraft. But for every one destroyed, 3 more formed from their remains, rebuilding themselves like liquid metal regaining shape. The mother in the civilian cabin held her son tighter as the swarm darkened the stars completely, blotting out every point of light except the burning engines of the human ship. She finally understood. They weren't witnessing a battle. They were witnessing something older, something relentless, something designed to spread. The human warship's lights flickered, then surged brighter than before as it shifted into an attack stance aimed directly at the heart of the Hive-fortress. Civilians held their breath. Pirates screamed prayers. The swarm tightened like a closing fist. The warship began charging a weapon powerful enough to rip holes in space, but the Hive-fortress responded by turning all its glowing tendrils toward the convoy. Everyone watched in frozen horror as the tendrils lit up with blinding red. They weren't aiming at the warship. They were aiming at the civilians. The Hive-fortress's tendrils burned hotter, their red glow spreading across the void like wildfire racing toward dry earth, and every civilian felt the truth hit them at the same time. They were the real target. The swarm was a distraction. The creature ship was the opening act. The fortress wanted them, not the pirates, not the human warship. The mother grabbed her son's face with shaking hands, whispering that everything would be okay even though her eyes said the opposite. The passengers around her prayed, cried, or stared in stunned silence as the tendrils charged brighter and brighter, each pulse faster than the last. The convoy captain shouted for everyone to brace, though he knew bracing wouldn't matter against something powerful enough to tear through shields like paper. The human warship reacted violently, swinging its hull sideways to shield as much of the convoy as possible. Its defensive field flared, straining, flickering, nearly collapsing under the pressure of protecting so many fragile vessels at once. Even wounded, even outnumbered, it held the line with a stubborn fury that made the civilians feel both hope and fear. Hope because it still fought for them, fear because they could see how close it was to failing. A voice crackled over the convoy speakers, distorted but unmistakably human, saying only, "Stand by." The captain whispered to himself, "For what?" But no answer came. Only rising heat and the hum of the warship's overloaded reactors. The swarm closed in, circling the convoy tighter, like vultures waiting for the kill. Pirate vessels buckled under the gravitational distortions. Some imploded. Others drifted into the fortress's pull, shredded before they could beg for mercy. Civilians watched in horror, knowing they were next. The little boy cried into his mother's chest as a tendril fired a test beam, a thin line of red that sliced past their window and carved a glowing scar into the black. The mother realized something then. The fortress wasn't trying to destroy them instantly. It was measuring them, studying them, preparing for something worse. Inside the convoy's bridge, alarms flared red across every panel. Shield integrity fell to critical. Engines strained. Hulls creaked. The captain looked at his remaining options. None of them good. They could try to flee and be torn apart. They could stay and be consumed. Or they could follow the human warship's unspoken command and trust it with their lives. His hands trembled as he stared at the warship through the window, its cannons glowing hotter and hotter. He finally understood. Whatever the warship was about to fire wouldn't just hit the fortress. It would hit everything nearby, including them. The warship sent one more message. Short, final, impossible to ignore. Choose now. The captain's breath caught. He reached toward the command console, toward the button that would decide whether the convoy raised their shields or dropped them entirely. The captain's trembling finger hovered over the console as the Hive-fortress's tendrils charged to full brightness, turning the void a deep burning red that washed over every terrified face inside the convoy. The mother held her son so tightly he could barely breathe, whispering that she loved him no matter what happened next. The hull around them shook with a slow, rising vibration, Like the universe itself was warning them that whatever came next would rewrite everything they understood about danger. The human warship angled sharply, its cannons now glowing white-hot, brighter than any weapon civilians had ever seen. The air inside every ship felt heavier, thicker, charged with a pressure that made lungs tighten. This wasn't a normal weapon. This was something forbidden, something capable of ripping apart the very space they floated in. The tendrils fired first. A cluster of red beams struck the warship's shields, bending the protective field inward, warping it, threatening to shatter it. The warship didn't retreat. It surged forward instead, forcing itself between the convoy and the fortress with a brutal determination that looked almost suicidal. Sparks flared across its armor. Plates cracked. Engines howled. But it held the line, refusing to break formation even as the red beams hammered it again and again. The swarm darted in, clawing at the warship from all sides with jagged limbs and rippling blades, their movements too fast to follow. Yet the warship fought like a cornered titan, firing bursts that tore the swarm apart, ramming smaller shadow forms, shaking the convoy with every impact. And then the tier widened again. This time, what emerged made even the Hive-fortress look small. A colossal structure pushed through the fracture, shaped like a cathedral carved from dark matter, its spires reaching out like the fingers of a dead god. The sight of it broke the last threads of courage in the pirates. Those who still lived screamed until their comms went silent. Civilians gasped, cried, prayed. Even the captain froze, his hand still hovering over the shield command, unable to look away from the impossible giant filling the void behind the swarm. The human warship reacted instantly. Its lights shifted, its stance changed, and the glow around its cannons intensified until the entire convoy cabin lit up in blinding white. The voice that had guided them returned, clearer this time, grave in a way that made every spine crawl. This is the source. This is what hunts your world. The mother's eyes widened. The captain's heart stopped. The little boy whispered, "Then what happens to us?" The warship gave only one answer. "My shot will either save you, or destroy everything." The Hive-fortress redirected all its tendrils toward the human warship. The warship locked its cannons directly on the fortress, and on the convoy behind it. The captain finally slammed his hand down on the console. Shields. Up or down. Command accepted. The weapon fired. The warship shot detonated with a blinding flash that wiped every star from view, and for several long seconds the universe became nothing but white fire and shaking metal. The convoy screamed as shields buckled under the force, bending inward like thin fabric pushed by a hurricane. The Hive-fortress staggered as the beam tore across its armor, carving a molten wound down its center. The swarm shrieked in some soundless language, scattering like torn pieces of shadow. But the blast did not stop. It kept pushing, drilling, burning, forcing open the fortress's core while the colossal cathedral structure behind it began to pulse, reacting like something alive and furious. The mother shielded her son's eyes, though the light cut through closed lids and painted their skin with searing brightness. Then the beam faded, but the silence that followed was far worse. The Hive-fortress crackled with ruptured energy, its tendrils twitching like dying limbs. Yet even wounded, it did not fall. It reformed around the wound, plates sliding, shadows knitting, rebuilding faster than human logic could process. The captain stared in disbelief. "It's healing faster than we can kill it." The scanners confirmed the nightmare. The fortress was adapting to the warship's attack, learning its frequency, bending it back into armor. The warship, drained from the enormous strike, dimmed its lights and drifted for a moment, sparks drifting off its battered hull. Civilians whispered prayers, afraid even to breathe as the void settled into an eerie pre-storm calm. Then everything broke loose. The colossal cathedral structure behind the tier awakened fully, each spire lighting up with ancient symbols that spiraled across its surface. Energy rippled outward, distorting space like ripples on a pond, but each ripple reversed gravity, pulling the convoy toward the tear in violent, staggering jerks. Passengers were thrown against walls. Hulls screamed. Alarms wailed as ships drifted dangerously close to each other. The pirates, what few remained, were sucked toward the fracture, swallowed whole in seconds. The captain fought the controls, shouting for thrusters, stabilizers, anything, but the pull was too strong. The human warship roared back to life. Its engines flared brighter than before, its broken plates sealing themselves with bursts of raw blue energy, as if some deeper protocol had finally activated. For the first time, Its lights formed a pattern, ringing its hull in tight, pulsing circles. Something ancient. Something dormant. Something forbidden. The voice returned, strained, intense, almost human but layered with something older beneath it. Convoy, understand this. The fortress was never your enemy. It was the gatekeeper. The cathedral is the true mind. If it crosses fully, your world falls. The mother felt her heart drop. The little boy stared at the glowing tear, whispering, "Mom, is that what comes after us?" The cathedral began charging a sphere of black light so dense it made the void tremble. The warship pushed forward, engine screaming, charging its last weapon. One final shot it might not survive. The convoy drifted between them, caught in the gravitational crossfire. The captain's eyes filled with tears as he realized the impossible choice ahead. If the warship fired now, they might all die. If it didn't, the cathedral would reach their world. The warship sent one last message. Prepare for final protocol. The cathedral's weapon reached critical mass. The warship's cannons locked into place. The next second would decide everything. The cathedral's black sphere reached full brightness, crushing the space around it into a trembling ring of darkness. The convoy drifted helplessly in the crossfire, every hull groaning as gravity twisted in violent waves. The mother held her son close, whispering a promise she wasn't sure she could keep, while outside the window the human warship gathered the last of its fading power. Its lights dimmed to a single burning core before flaring outward again in a brilliant blue ring, an ancient protocol awakening inside its heart. The captain stared at the readings, realizing what the warship was preparing. "It's not firing at them," he whispered. "It's firing at the tear." And the truth hit him hard. The warship wasn't trying to win. It was trying to end the battlefield itself. The cathedral turned its massive black sphere toward the warship, preparing to erase it from existence. Tendrils of living darkness reached out, curling around the edges of the void. The swarm screamed in a silent chorus, folding toward the convoy like wings closing on prey. The creature ship braced, limbs tightening, spine glowing. For 1 second, every force hung suspended, locked in a balance that could not last. The little boy whispered, "Mom, someone has to save us." And in that moment, the human warship made its final move. It ignited its engines so bright they turned the darkness to daylight and launched itself straight toward the cathedral, pushing past the fortress, past the swarm, past the spinning debris. The convoy felt the shockwave of its acceleration shudder through every bolt in their hulls. A final transmission echoed across every frequency. Calm, steady, almost gentle. For humanity. For every world that still dreams. The warship unleashed its last weapon, a lance of blue-white energy so powerful it ripped the tear open wider for a heartbeat. The beam struck the cathedral's black sphere head-on. Light clashed with darkness, folding into a violent storm of energy that twisted space like a sheet caught in a hurricane. The Hive-fortress cracked down the middle, its tendrils shattering into drifting shards. The swarm dissolved into smoke. The creature ship turned its glowing spine away, as if bowing in farewell. And at the center of it all, the warship drove itself deeper into the storm, forcing the collapsing energies into the tear, sealing it piece by piece until the last fragment of the cathedral was pulled screaming back into the void. Then the light vanished, the tear closed, and the warship was gone. Silence followed, soft, heavy, unreal. The convoy drifted alone in the quiet, safe but wounded, staring at the empty space where their protector had stood moments before. The captain wiped his eyes, whispering, "They saved us, all of us." Civilians embraced one another. Children cried. Adults whispered thanks to a ship that would never hear them. The mother held her son and pointed at the dark sky, telling him, "Remember this. Heroes don't always come home, but they make sure others do." And as the convoy engine slowly reignited, a faint blue shimmer lingered in the stars, one last echo of the warship's light, shining like a promise carved into the universe itself.